almost in a whisper, watching him walk away with his secretary. The triplets' eyes followed him until he disappeared into the crowd. Leonid carried himself like a character from a modern-day fairy tale. Once he was out of sight, Era looked up at her mom. "Mommy," she whispered. "Yes, sweetheart?" Opal asked, adjusting Era's hair clip. "I like him," Era said, placing a hand over her chest. "He's kind. His eyes are nice." Opal smiled and glanced again in the direction Leonid had gone. "Really?" she teased. "Are you sure it's not just because Nanny Annie has a crush on him?" Era grinned. "Maybe, but I like him too." Nikolai chimed in. "He looks like a prince from the cartoons, but serious." "Super serious," added Pavel, pointing toward where Leonid had walked away. They continued their stroll through the mall, but the triplets couldn't stop talking about Leonid. Opal simply smiled, quietly admiring her children and their innocent fascination. Inside Opal's elegant office on the top floor of one of the most prestigious business towers in Portland, a serious conversation was taking place. She sat confidently in her executive chair. In front of her stood her assistant Miller, her Aunt Miranda, and Uncle Paul, along with their assistant and a trusted team of executives. "Ma'am," Miller began, holding a few documents. "I've reviewed the updated expansion strategy. If we could establish a partnership with Miklov Group of Enterprises, our growth could double in the next 2 years." Opal furrowed her brow as she read the papers, then glanced up. "Miklov Group, as in Leonid Miklov?" Miller's most trusted team member nodded. "Yes, ma'am. He's the current CEO. Their influence in logistics and global distribution is unmatched. If we can get even one partnership contract with them, your company will gain access to their network across Europe and even parts of Asia." A silence settled over the room as Opal considered what she'd just heard. She looked out the large window. The city of Portland stretched below under the setting sun. "But I suppose it won't be that easy," Opal said in a softer voice. Her Aunt Miranda chimed in. "Correct. They're very selective. From what I've heard, it's nearly impossible to get through to Mr. Miklov himself. His company filters everything through multiple departments. You either need serious leverage or luck." Opal smiled faintly, somewhere between amused and nervous. "Luck. I'm currently checking if you have any existing connection, any link we could start with," Miller added. "I'll keep you posted." "All right. Let's prepare our options, but we're not going to force it. We take this smartly and slowly." "Yes, ma'am," Miller confirmed before stepping out of the office. That evening, when Opal returned home, her children greeted her with excited voices. Despite the exhaustion of meetings and tough decisions, all of that melted the moment they ran up to hug her. "Mommy," the triplets chimed in together, their arms wrapping tightly around her. "You won't believe what happened today," Pavel exclaimed, tugging her toward the couch. Opal smiled, taking off her coat and handing it to the nanny. Okay, one at a time. What happened?" She sat in the middle of the couch. The kids gathered around her eagerly. "Remember that handsome man at the mall?" Era began, almost jumping from excitement. "The one with the nice eyes?" added Nikolai. His Tagalog accent made it sound extra cute, though they had tutors teaching them proper English and Filipino. "Leonid," Pavel said with pride. "We saw him again." "Really?" Opal asked, curious now. "Where?" "At school, Mommy." They all replied at once. Opal's brows furrowed. "School? What do you mean?" "Our classmate Alexei, he's his nephew," Era explained. "He picked him up today, and he saw us. He waved at us. He said, 'Nice to see you again, little ones,'" Nikolai added, mimicking Leonid's deep voice. Opal blinked. "Wow, that's unexpected." "He was still nice, Mommy," Pavel added. "He even asked if you were okay." A strange feeling stirred inside Opal's chest. She couldn't tell if it was nervousness or joy. "Did he say anything else?" she asked. "He just smiled and said he remembers us," Era replied, hugging her mom. I told him you were busy. Opal smiled and hugged her daughter back. You did? Thank you, my love. We like him, Mommy, Nikolai said, looking up at her. He's kind, and his coat smells nice. Opal laughed and kissed each of their foreheads. I'm glad you had a good day. Back in Opal's office, the meeting continued with intense focus. Important documents were laid out on the table, company profiles of Miklov Group and proposal drafts her team had been working on. So, the goal, Opal began, sitting upright, is to secure a mutual deal with Miklov Group, either in supply chain partnership or logistics outsourcing. But we're not going in empty-handed. We offer something compelling. Her uncle nodded. We need to make them see that you're not just another hopeful CEO. You've built something solid in 5 years, Opal. Make that count. I agree, added her aunt. Leonid Miklov is a name feared and respected in business. But from what I've read in articles, he doesn't seem that cold in person. A moment later, her secretary interjected. I sent the official inquiry and a proposal summary yesterday, just a preliminary outline. Opal leaned back in her chair. Honestly, I expected silence for at least a month, if we even get a response at all. But not even 2 hours after that meeting, Miller returned to the office holding her tablet, a bright smile on her face. Ma'am, you won't believe this. What? Opal asked, standing up immediately. They responded directly from Mr. Miklov's executive office. Everyone stopped. Wait, what? Her uncle asked, almost rising from his chair. Miller's eyes widened as she nodded. Mr. Miklov approved the meeting. He even suggested the schedule. Tomorrow, 9:30 a.m., and I quote, I'd like to meet with Miss Opal personally. Personally? Opal repeated, stunned. That fast, that direct? Miller nodded again. He's never done this. Not for anyone. This is huge. The next morning, Opal was fully prepared. She wore an elegant navy blue pantsuit that highlighted her natural beauty and confidence. Her aunt and uncle accompanied her, both dressed formally as a sign of respect and professionalism. As their car approached the Miklov Group building, they noticed the tight security in the area. Opal's palms nearly began to sweat as she stared at the towering structure, a symbol of the man's power and success. The moment they entered the lobby, one of the company's staff members greeted them. Miss Opal, he asked with a formal smile. Mr. Miklov will be meeting you shortly. This way, please. But before they could even reach the elevator, a familiar presence suddenly appeared from down the hall. Good morning, came a calm but deep voice. They all stopped. Leonid himself walked up to them, wearing a classic gray tailored suit. His posture was composed, his smile disarming. Miss Opal, I'm glad you came, he said, extending his hand. Despite the nerves in her chest, Opal accepted his handshake and smiled in return. Thank you for the warm welcome, Mr. Miklov. You can call me Leonid, he said casually, then turned briefly to her aunt and uncle. Welcome to Miklov Group. It's an honor to finally meet the family of those delightful children. Her aunt and uncle exchanged glances, stunned. It was highly unusual for someone like Leonid, a business mogul known for his privacy, to personally greet visitors. Opal composed herself and stepped forward. I hope we're not taking too much of your time. You're giving me a reason to pause, he replied, smiling. And that's rare. Inside the executive conference room of Miklov Group of Enterprises, Opal, her aunt and uncle, and a few senior advisors from her company sat around the large table. At the center was their proposal, a potential partnership that, if successful, would open massive opportunities for Opal's business. The meeting proceeded smoothly and professionally. Opal's presentation was clear, detailed, and compelling. She spoke with experience and precision, fully demonstrating her command of the business. Leonid remained quiet as he listened, but he never took his eyes off her, not just because of her business acumen, but because there seemed to be something more he was observing beyond her words. You built this company from scratch? He asked once she had finished. No, Opal replied honestly. My parents started it. I took over, grew it, and made key investments to get it where it is now. Leonid smiled. He was clearly impressed. I must say, he began, leaning back in his chair. Your proposal is well thought out, clear, strategic, and, more importantly, sincere. That's rare. Opal exchanged glances with her aunt and uncle. None of them could hide the flicker of joy inside. It wasn't a direct yes, but they could tell Leonid was genuinely considering it. I'll have my legal team review it, he continued, and we'll schedule another discussion, but for now, I'd say it's a promising start. Opal stood and offered a respectful nod. Thank you, Mr. Miklov. We appreciate your time and consideration. Her uncle also spoke, his expression warm and proud. It's an honor, Mr. Miklov. Please, Leonid said, smiling again. Just Leonid will do. After leaving the Miklov group building, Opal and her family could hardly contain their excitement. Inside the car, while they made their way home, her aunt looked over at her with a knowing smile. Did you notice that, sweetheart? She asked, her voice playful. It didn't seem like that was the first time you and Mr. Leonid had met. Her uncle chimed in from the back seat. Exactly. He was unusually warm for someone known to be cold and unreachable. Opal was quiet for a moment before smiling and nodding slightly. Well, it wasn't the first time we met. Her aunt and uncle leaned forward, surprised. Remember the day the kids asked to go to the mall? She began, looking out the window. That day, Pavel accidentally bumped into him. The two gasped. At the mall? That was him? Opal nodded. Pavel said sorry, and the man said it was okay. I was about to apologize, too. Then I realized who he was. My God, that was him, her aunt exclaimed. And that's not all, Opal added. One of the triplets' classmates is his nephew, so the kids have seen him at school. He said hello to them twice already. So, he knows your children, her uncle said, still processing the information. Opal just smiled. He's even spoken with them. They said he's kind. Her aunt could barely hide her excitement. No wonder he smiled like that earlier. There's a connection already. You know, in business, sometimes emotions still come into play. Opal cut her off with a chuckle. Auntie. But she couldn't hide the playful smile on her lips. This is business, she insisted. Yes, yes, her aunt replied with a wink, glancing at her husband. But even in business, there are feelings sometimes. That wasn't just a business smile. He remembered you very clearly. Opal laughed softly and shook her head. But in her heart, no matter how much she tried to keep things professional, there was a flutter, a warmth that she couldn't quite ignore. Happily, Opal made her way to her children's school. She had just come from a short but important event, but no matter how significant, she had chosen to keep her promise to pick up the triplets herself. As always, she was dressed elegantly in her corporate attire, a white blazer, a beige skirt, and her hair neatly done. There was a hint of exhaustion on her face, quickly softened by anticipation. As soon as she stepped out of the car, one of the children spotted her. Mommy! Pavel called, running toward her, followed by Era and Nikolai. Hey, my babies, Opal smiled and knelt to hug all three, planting kisses on each of their foreheads. Did you behave well today? Yes, Mommy, they answered together, full of affection. As she hugged them, a young boy's voice called from behind them. There they are, Uncle, my friends, and their mom. Opal looked up, and her heart skipped a beat. Standing behind the boy was Leonid Miklov, his aura softer than usual as he held the boy's small hand. Leonid smiled warmly when their eyes met. Good afternoon, he greeted, a trace of joy in his tone. Though surprised, Opal kept her composure and smiled back. Good afternoon, Mr. Miklov. Please, he said right away. Just Leonid. We've met more than once, remember? Opal nodded slightly, her smile growing. Suddenly, the young boy beside Leonid looked up and pointed at her. She's the nice lady I told you about, Uncle, the one who always smiles at me. She's the mommy of my friends. Leonid glanced at his nephew, then back at Opal. So, it's you, he said, chuckling gently. Now it all makes sense. He talks about you and the triplets all the time. Opal couldn't help but smile. They've mentioned your nephew, too. They say he's very kind. We all get along, Era chimed in, grabbing the boy's hand. He always shares his pencils. Sharing is caring, the boy added proudly, making the triplets giggle. Leonid paused, watching the children's joyful moment, then stepped a little closer to Opal. It's nice seeing you again outside the boardroom. You too, Opal replied softly, adjusting a strand of hair. I honestly didn't expect to see you here. I just picked him up, Leonid said. Though now I think I understand why he insisted I be early today. Their eyes met again, not awkward, not intense, just a quiet look that seemed to say more than words. Something unspoken lingered between them. Maybe we'll see each other again soon, Leonid said, then turned to his nephew. Ready to go? Yes, uncle. Before leaving, the boy waved to the triplets. Bye, guys. Bye, nice mommy. The triplets waved back, and Opal covered her smile with her hand. She couldn't name the exact emotion inside her, but she knew for sure it was something different. A few weeks after the successful first meeting, Leonid Miklov officially accepted the business proposal from Opal's company. What once seemed like an impossible partnership had now become a concrete agreement, a new opportunity that would benefit both of their enterprises. They were at a formal signing ceremony in a large conference room, surrounded by board members, legal advisors, and members of the press for the official press release. Opal wore an elegant cream-colored suit. Leonid, in a charcoal black three-piece suit, looked as striking and composed as always. After signing the final document, Leonid stood up and extended his hand toward Opal. You have my word, Miss Santiago, he said with a slight smile. From now on, we're partners. Let's grow together. Their handshake was firm, respectful, and warm. Thank you for trusting us, Opal replied, feeling the unusual heat of his hand in hers. It lingered slightly longer than necessary, but neither seemed to mind. From that moment, their meetings became more frequent, not only as business partners, but as two people who seemed to share a natural ease around each other. Every business update was followed by quiet conversations, shared glances, and a connection they never spoke aloud. Sometimes they grabbed coffee at the same cafe after meetings. Other times, they both happened to attend the same charity events, and occasionally, they'd bump into each other while picking up their children from school. It felt unplanned, yet somehow inevitable. Leonid already knew the truth: Opal was separated from her husband. She had been for over 6 years, and because of that, there were no complications about the growing closeness between them. Until one afternoon, while Opal was reading reports in her living room with her triplets nearby, the children approached her with big smiles on their faces. Mommy, can we ask something? Nikolai said, tugging her arm. Opal looked up from her papers. What is it, love? Pavel jumped in. Can Leonid be our dad? Opal's eyes widened, the report nearly slipping from her hands. What? She was stunned. Why do you want him to be your dad? Because he's always nice to us, Era answered. He gives us ice cream. He helped Pavel fix his toy. He teaches us Russian words, too. He's kind and sweet, Mommy. We want him to be our dad. Yeah. He calls us his little bosses, and we love it, Pavel added, nodding. Opal was speechless, but before she could think of how to respond, a familiar voice came from the doorway. Who knows? Leonid was standing there, holding a box of chocolates for the kids. Opal was caught off guard. She hadn't realized he'd arrived. He smiled at the triplets, walked over, and knelt in front of them. I like your mom a lot, he said, smiling gently. And I also want to be your dad. A brief silence filled the room. Opal was completely stunned by what she had just heard, while the triplets beamed with joy. But first, Leonid continued, his voice calm and sincere, still kneeling, I'll court your mom, just like a true gentleman should. For a moment, the world seemed to stop for Opal. She couldn't move. She couldn't speak. Do you really like our mom? Era asked softly. Yes, Leonid replied, still looking directly at Opal. I like her so much. Yay! The triplets cheered, clapping and rushing to hug Leonid. We love you, Leonid. Do everything so you can really be our dad, they exclaimed in unison. Leonid smiled as he looked at Opal, his expression full of promise. And in his gaze, Opal began to feel something stir again. Maybe there was still room in her heart for a new kind of love. Leonid promised not just to Opal, but to the triplets, that he would win her heart the right way. And even though Opal liked him too, she wanted to be courted first. Leonid understood, and that's exactly what he did. He didn't just woo her, he courted the children, too. 4 months after Leonid first expressed his intentions, Opal had to return to the Philippines with her triplets for an investors' gala that was happening that very day. The entire hall was lit with brilliance, luxurious chandeliers overhead, blooming centerpieces on every table, and opulence radiating from every corner. It was one of the most anticipated events of the year in business and tech, attended by the most influential figures in the industry. Opal Santiago arrived with her 3 children in a sleek black luxury car. All eyes turned as they entered. She wore a stunning emerald green silk gown, simple yet dignified. The triplets wore matching suits, each embroidered with their initials, Nikolai, Pavel, and Era. Ma'am Opal, this way, please, smiled an usher, escorting them to the VIP table. On the other side of the hall, Darren quietly sipped red wine. Dressed in his branded suit, he looked poised, but his body language betrayed a hint of unease. He had come looking for potential partners, not knowing that Opal would be one of the guest speakers tonight until the host climbed the stage and began the program. Ladies and gentlemen, let us now welcome our keynote speaker, the visionary behind one of the fastest-growing tech firms in Asia, the CEO of Tribo Innovations, Miss Opal Santiago, and her triplets, the tech prodigies. The hall erupted in applause. From his seat, Darren sat frozen, frowning and swallowing hard. That's not my kids. Opal walked onto the stage with her 3 children. Era held a small flash drive that would be used for the presentation. Nikolai and Pavel, dressed like little gentlemen, bowed politely to the guests. Facing the microphone, Opal began her inspiring speech. When I became a mother, I thought my dreams would have to be put aside. But instead, my children gave me the drive to aim higher, not just for them, but with them. Tonight, you are not only seeing a company's progress. You are witnessing a family's victory. The audience broke into loud applause. Opal's eyes sparkled with pride and joy. The triplets smiled and waved to the guests, clearly enjoying themselves. As they stepped down from the stage, Darren rushed toward them, visibly shaken. He was still in disbelief over what he had just witnessed. "Op?" he said, his voice trembling. Are they our children?" Opal looked at him without emotion, calm, cold, distant. Her gaze alone made clear how far apart their worlds now were. Darren tried to step toward the triplets to hug them, but all 3 moved away at the same time. "You're not allowed to touch us," they said together, stepping back. Darren was stunned. "What? I'm your father." But Era stood firm. "We don't care. Daddy Leonid is the only one who is allowed to touch us," she continued. "And you're not him, so you have no right to touch us." Nikolai glared at him. "We don't want you." Darren turned to Opal, his eyes filled with a sudden desperation. "You have a new husband?" he asked, almost in a whisper. But before Opal could answer, Pavel spoke up. "Yes, and he's so much better than you." He paused, then met Darren's eyes directly. "Even though he's not our real father, he's a good dad." Silence fell over the area. No one moved. Darren stood frozen, as though slapped in the face. "From now on," Pavel said sharply, "don't come near us. Just like you didn't need us before, we don't need you now." Without another word, Opal gently took her children's hands and led them away from the man she once loved, now a stranger she had chosen to forget. Inside the car on their way home, Opal sat in silence. In the back seat, the triplets, Nikolai, Pavel, and Era, gazed out the window. They didn't look sad, but she could feel the heaviness in the air after their encounter with Darren. While the driver focused on the road, Opal glanced at the rearview mirror and gently asked, "My loves, are you okay?" The three looked back at her. Era was the first to respond, taking Nikolai and Pavel's hands. "Yes, Mommy. We're fine." Nikolai nodded. "We're happy, Mommy. Promise. You don't need to worry." Opal nodded back, but the concern in her eyes didn't fade. She wasn't at ease. She took a deep breath before asking again. "Are you sure you really don't want to talk to your biological father? Maybe you want to ask him something or hear his explanation." There was a moment of silence. The triplets exchanged glances. Pavel was the first to speak. "No, Mommy. We don't want to talk to him." Era nodded and added, "Yeah, I agree with Pavel. Grandma Miranda told us everything. That's why we hate him." Nikolai leaned forward from the back seat, placing his hand on the back of Opal's chair. "He did everything. All the pain you went through because of him, we know it now. That's why we're angry." Tears welled up in Opal's eyes, not from anger, but from the deep understanding her children showed. They were still young, but they already understood so much. Pavel spoke again, softly but firmly. "He brought us into this world, and for that we're grateful, but that doesn't mean we want him to be our dad." Era smiled at her mother. "Having you, Mommy, and Daddy Leonid, that's more than enough for us." A quiet sob escaped Opal as she smiled through her tears. She reached back, and the three of them held her hand at once. She stroked their palms gently, holding back the rest of her tears. "Thank you, my children, for your love and for accepting everything. I don't know what I did to deserve children like you." "Because you're the best mommy in the world," Era said with a giggle. "And Daddy Leonid is the best daddy in the world," Nikolai added. "Even better than the one who made us," Pavel whispered, then chuckled lightly. Opal turned her gaze forward, and in that moment, she felt that everything she had gone through in the past had meaning because from all that pain, 3 hearts had bloomed, full of love that now filled her world. They didn't stay long in the Philippines after the Investors' Gala and a few other events and meetings. Soon after, they returned to Portland. As Opal stepped out of the car, she was greeted by the crisp, cool air of Oregon. She still held her handbag along with the gifts she had brought for her aunt and uncle, who had been eagerly waiting to see them again. The moment they entered the house, her Aunt Miranda wrapped her in a warm hug. Uncle Paul sat smiling in the living room, holding a steaming cup of coffee. The triplets were overjoyed to be back. They showered their grandparents with kisses on the cheeks, laughing with excitement. After the cheerful reunion, Opal asked the children's nanny to help them change out of their travel clothes and get ready to rest. Putting his coffee down on the table, Paul sat on the couch, and Opal let out a deep breath. "Something happened at the gala," she began. "Darren, he was there." Miranda's eyes widened. "What? Darren? What was that devil doing there?" "It was a business gala in Manila," Opal said, her voice trembling slightly. "I didn't expect him to be there. Then suddenly, he approached us. He came up to the kids." Her voice shook more with every word. "He told the children he was their father." Miranda immediately stormed over and sat beside her. "That man, he has no shame. He didn't even try to look for you before, and now he shows up out of nowhere like he has any right." The triplets were furious, Opal continued. "They told him to stay away." "Good," Paul cut in. "He deserves that. Let those kids grow up hating him. Let him feel the weight of not being recognized as a father. That's the greatest punishment for a man who destroyed a family." Opal nodded. "They asked me to explain everything, and I did." They were proud of the triplets for how they handled the situation. "You've raised them well, Opal," Miranda said. "They know exactly who deserves to be called their dad." Opal chuckled softly despite everything. "And I also found something out about him. He and Georgina, they're no longer together." "What? Really?" both Miranda and Paul said in unison. "Yes, apparently Darren found out that the child Georgina was pregnant with wasn't his. She lied to him, just like he once lied to me." Her uncle shook his head. Karma, quick and sharp. They betrayed each other. Now he knows what real pain feels like. And honestly, Opal added, I don't feel anything for him anymore. No anger, no sadness. He's just a stranger to me. And the kids chose Leonid, she continued, not because I told them to, but because they feel who truly loves them. And for Opal, that was enough. The sun was still warm overhead as the whole family walked happily through the park. The children held cotton candy in their hands while Leonid carried a picnic basket. As Opal spread out the blanket on the grass, the triplets giggled, running in circles around Leonid, who had made time just to be with them. They jumped on him from behind, wrapping their little arms around him. He kissed each of their foreheads and hugged them tightly. A gentle smile appeared on his face, pure joy radiating from the children's affection. After a while, the triplets ran off to play tag. Leonid came over to help Opal set up the picnic. They sat together on the blanket, watching the children laughing and chasing each other under the sun. Leonid, Opal said softly. The kids, they saw their biological father. Leonid turned to her, his expression calm but serious. She told him what had happened, and he listened silently. When she finished, he didn't show a hint of jealousy, just quiet understanding. I wouldn't blame them if they're mad at him, Leonid replied. But your kids are kind. I'm sure one day they'll find it in their hearts to forgive. Opal looked at her children playing nearby. I truly hope so. The last thing I want is for them to grow up carrying resentment toward their father. Because despite everything Darren had done, she still wanted her children to have peace. Moments later, the triplets ran back and jumped into Leonid's lap. Pavel was the first to speak. Daddy, can you be our real daddy now, please? Leonid froze briefly, then looked at Opal as if asking for permission. Opal gave a small nod. Leonid's smile widened. Of course, he said. I would be honored to be your dad in every way that matters. The kids' eyes lit up with joy. They threw their arms around him and shouted together, Promise you'll never leave us. Leonid hugged them even tighter. I promise, he said firmly. I will never leave you. Not today. Not ever. And when Opal finally said yes to Leonid, after several months of his patient courting and efforts to win her love, their children couldn't contain their joy. What if the man you loved abandoned you and your unborn triplets for another woman? This is the heart-wrenching story of Opal Sanders, a woman betrayed, left sobbing in the rain, only to rise stronger than ever. Stay tuned to Dark Voices to uncover how she turned pain into power. I never wanted to be the father of a neighborhood. I'm not the father of those kids. Get out of here. With a voice full of scorn, Darren yelled as he crushed the dignity of Opal, who clutched her stomach protectively. I've got a new woman now, one I'm moving in, and I guarantee she doesn't look tired and washed up like you. He turned his back without remorse, leaving her sobbing in the rain. 5 years later, at a prestigious investor gala in Los Angeles, Darren froze when the host announced the keynote speaker. Let us welcome the CEO of Tribo Innovations, Miss Opal Sanders, and her triplets, the tech prodigies. Darren swallowed hard. They're not my kids. Want to know how Opal transformed her heartbreak into triumph? Keep watching Dark Voices for the incredible twist. It was a bright afternoon, but the weight Opal carried inside her was far from light. Sitting on the veranda of her aunt's countryside home in upstate New York, she quietly sipped her coffee, her eyes watching the sun inch toward the horizon. Her Aunt Miranda approached, the hesitation on her face clear. She sat beside Opal carefully. A few seconds of silence passed before she spoke. Sweetheart, her voice was soft, I have something I need to tell you. I hope you won't take it the wrong way. Opal looked at her, anxiety creeping in, but she kept her composure. What is it, Aunt Miranda? The older woman sighed deeply, clearly struggling. I didn't want you to hear this from someone else, but I think you have a right to know the truth. Someone told me they saw Darren at the hospital the other day. Opal's brows furrowed. The hospital? Maybe he was just getting a checkup. He wasn't alone, her aunt replied carefully. They were sure it wasn't you. Aunt Miranda paused, gauging her niece's reaction. Didn't you tell me that Darren's always too busy with work to come with you for your own checkups? Opal stopped. The air felt heavier. She stared into her coffee cup as her fingers began to tremble. Then the tears fell, slow at first, then without end. Her aunt pulled out a photo. In it, Darren was kissing a woman. The same Darren who hadn't once shown up to her OB appointments, claiming he was too busy. The same Darren who promised to love her forever. He's been cheating on you, Opal, her aunt said gravely. The words broke something inside her. She had long suspected it. He'd grown cold, always angry, even when she did nothing wrong. And now her suspicions were confirmed. Why? She whispered, her voice broken. Haven't I done enough? Am I not enough? Her aunt embraced her tightly, like a mother comforting her own child. Don't blame yourself, she said. The man you married is a fool who never learned how to be content. But Opal couldn't stop crying. Her body trembled as her hands clutched her stomach, as if to shield the unborn life inside her from the betrayal. We're clearly the happiest people there. On the wedding day, as Opal walked down the aisle, she was greeted by Leonid's loving smile. The joy in their children's eyes was unmistakable. Finally, their long-awaited dream had come true. Our dream came true, Era whispered as she watched the ceremony. You're finally a princess, said Nikolai. And we finally have a real dad, Pavel added. From then on, their family only grew stronger and more loving. Leonid taught them to be brave, courteous, and forgiving. As the triplets grew into young adults, they decided to meet with Darren one final time. This time, in a quiet cafe in Manila. It was a serious conversation. Darren sat across from them, silent, visibly nervous. We came here to be honest with you, Era said, her face solemn. We've decided to cut all ties with you, Nikolai added. We're not angry anymore, Pavel said calmly. And we don't hate you either, but we don't see you as our father. We appreciate that you gave us life, Era said softly. But our hearts belong to the man who raised us, who stayed when you didn't, and that's Daddy Leonid. There was nothing more painful for Darren than hearing those words from the children he had once abandoned. But deep down, he knew he deserved it. I understand, my children, Darren replied, struggling to hold back tears. I guess this is karma. I made choices that led me here. I'm sorry. The three of them nodded. There was no hatred in their eyes, only peace. They stood up together, and that was the last time Darren ever saw his children. When they returned to Oregon, Leonid was already waiting for them at the airport. He greeted them with tight hugs, letting them know that no matter what happened, he would always be there for them. From wounds and tears, a real family had been formed not by blood, but by love. Years passed, and the triplets grew into remarkable young adults, children any parent would be proud of. Despite all the hardships they had once endured, they grew up humble, compassionate, and loving toward their family. Nikolai and Pavel, after completing their studies in business management and technology, became partners to Leonid in running the Miklov Group of enterprises. Nikolai excelled in transactions and partnerships, while Pavel focused on innovation and systems development. They often debated ideas but always aligned in their shared goals. Meanwhile, Era took over management of Opal's company. Soon, she would be joined by their youngest sibling, Rain, once he graduated. Whether Rain chose to help his sister or follow his own path, the entire family promised to support him no matter what. Because of the triplets' brilliance and dedication, both family companies flourished even more. People admired them not only for their achievements but also for their closeness. The siblings remained tightly bonded, even with their busy responsibilities. They always made time for family dinners, weekend getaways, or simple movie nights in their Oregon home. They were close to their parents, to Opal, the source of their strength, and to Leonid, the unwavering pillar of their home. Even as the couple aged, the children never stopped showering them with hugs, kisses, and "I love you, Mom," and "I love you, Dad." Every time they came home, one day, while the siblings were gathered in the company's private lounge, there was a knock at the door. Opal entered with Leonid beside her. Both looked solemn, as if carrying heavy news. They sat across from the triplets. Your biological father, Darren, Opal began gently. He's very sick, stage 4, and the doctors say he doesn't have much time left. The room fell silent. No one spoke. We know everything he did can't be erased, Leonid added quietly. But we believe everyone deserves peace at the end. He's still a part of your story. The siblings exchanged glances, hesitant, conflicted. Anger long buried stirred alongside an old quiet grief. Do we have to see him? Era asked in a whisper. Only if you're ready, Opal said. We're not forcing you, but you might regret it if you don't say goodbye. After a long silence, Pavel finally nodded. Then let's do it, not for him, but for ourselves, to finally close this chapter. Nikolai and Era nodded in agreement. They knew it was time to let go, not as an act of revenge, but of release. The hallway of the hospital was quiet. Each step the triplets took felt heavy, full of emotions that had been hidden for years. Inside a private room, Darren lay on a bed, thin, pale, aged. His eyes stared at the ceiling, waiting, perhaps for the end or a miracle. When the door opened, he turned his head immediately. His eyes widened in disbelief, then filled with emotion. Nikolai, Pavel, Era, he murmured, voice trembling. My children, you came. They didn't answer right away but slowly approached his bed. Era was the first to reach for his hand, frail and cold. She gave a small smile. We're here, Dad, she whispered. Tears streamed down Darren's cheeks. He wept. I'm so sorry for all the pain I caused, for not being a good father, for not choosing you. Please forgive me. Nikolai smiled faintly. We've forgiven you, Dad. That's why we're here. But Pavel, still standing at the foot of the bed, had one last question to ask. Can I ask you something, Dad? Darren nodded slowly. Anything. Did you ever read any of the letters we sent you when we were kids? Darren's face twisted in confusion. Letters? When we were little, Era said gently. We asked our nanny to help us write to you. We wanted to ask if you still remembered us, if you missed us, why you didn't want us. Mom didn't know. We just wanted answers. We never heard back, Nikolai added. Not once, so we always wondered. Did you even read them? Darren looked horrified. No, I never got any letters. Not a single one. If I had, I would have written back. I would have tried, but I didn't receive anything. Maybe your mom or Georgina kept them from me. They hated me, especially after I left Georgina. The room was heavy with silence. Tears welled in his eyes again. After a moment, Pavel stepped closer, placing a hand on his shoulder. It's okay, Dad. It's all in the past now. We don't want to carry it anymore. We can't change what happened, Era added. Georgina is gone. Her child has their own life now. There's nothing more to fix. But we're here. We came back to let go of everything. We forgive you, Nikolai said. And this time, they all meant it fully. Darren cried in their arms. For the first time in years, the weight he carried was lifted. In the final week of his life, the triplets visited him every day. They paid for his hospital bills, ensured his comfort, and spoke to him during his final days. Opal also visited, bringing her forgiveness and peace. And Leonid, though silent, was present, his quiet support unwavering. He had become the symbol of their new beginning. On the final day of Darren's life, he held an old photograph of the triplets as children. With one last breath, he whispered the words he had waited a lifetime to say. I can rest now. My children have forgiven me. The triplets were at peace, knowing that the story of their father had ended on a quiet, merciful note. No bitterness, no rage, only forgiveness, love, and understanding remained. From betrayal to triumph, Opal and her triplets turned pain into a legacy of love and success. What did you think of their incredible journey? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more inspiring stories on Dark Voices.